Hello everyone, my name is Dan Burwitz and I will be doing the Law and Order Victim Telco Unit presentation today. As I said, I am Dan Burwitz. I am with VantagePoint Solutions. I'm one of our IT security specialists here, and any of the stories you're going to hear today are either from my perspective or from a different technician's perspective that I know about in the past. So, a little bit about me. I'm a Dakota State University grad. I went there for cyber operations. This is pretty much just information security in general. And I love topics like cryptography or the encryption of the internet, how people go about sharing information on the internet through your ISPs or different forms, the different protocols behind it, things like that. But today's presentation is going to be more about the ways people are going to go about attacking you or knowing how they will go about taking the offensive against you, gathering information, and different things like that. The quote on the screen there is the reason behind the presentation that I've made. It's why I want you to understand the enemy, how they're going to go about doing the different information so you can go about defending your network, changing things, and making it very difficult for anyone to try and get into your network or get creds or any of those different things. Sure, a short little disclaimer about the presentation today. All of these come from red team exercises. What VantagePoint defines that as, it's any exercise where I'm going to physically go try and break into your building, try and get into your network, or do something malicious that without a contract or without a signed agreement between us would be illegal in some fashion. All the names have been changed to protect any of the other customers that I've done this for in the past, just to make sure that no one's trying to use any of the ways I use to get into these places, buildings, networks again, and they've all been hopefully fixed and patched in the past. So behind the motivation of why you may be attacked, the number one reason is going to be money. People are interested in putting ransomware on your network, doing different things, stealing information, or possibly just trying to transfer money out of your bank account in the end of the day. The other one could be government espionage, or they're wanting, some information about U.S. citizens, where they go, what they do with their information, or just trying to decrypt that traffic in some fashion. You can also get some angry customers out there that are trying to DDoS, deface, anything like that of your network, your websites, anything along those lines. And there are also crypts or script kiddies. These are people that have tools but don't really know exactly what they're doing. And you guys are the first hop out onto the internet, so these could be anything from high school students to anyone else. Just using these tools, running them, throwing information at the wall and seeing what sticks. And then finally, hacktivist groups. These are people that have specific beef against you for whatever reason that are actually trying to break into your network and bring you down in some fashion. So I like to start these presentations from the ground up. So I'm going to walk through how I would go about doing open source intelligence, or passive reconnaissance as it's also known, against a network, finding information about it. My slides here are all going to be related to VantagePoint Solutions, the company I work for, but you can also use these tools to search yourself, search other people, and just know that all of these are interacting. You are not going out and interacting with the person's device. The Shodan or the Harvester or any of those ones are going out and doing it for you. So into the first one, Shodan. You can see it on my screen here. What this does, it allows me to put in an IP address or a domain name, and I can search for what ports and what services are open, and it also tells me who it's registered with. So right off the bat, you can kind of see that port 25 and 10443 are open over there. Port 25 is SMTP, it's where our emails come in and out, and then 10443 is actually a VPN over there. Without even interacting with the network in any fashion, I already have a good scan of what it is, what services are open, and I can start planning how I might go about exploiting those as well. A few other tools I'll get into in just a bit are the Harvester, ExploitDB, and Arion. A few different ones about these. The Harvester allows me to capture emails. ExploitDB is where you can search Google in creative ways and get interesting results. And Arion is just finding IPs that are registered to you. So a little bit more about Shodan. If you get more specific and you know default port or default something that you want to get into, you can actually go and search large amounts of devices on here too. You don't have to get specific with just one or two IPs. The reason for this is, say if I have an exploit for Minecraft out there, I'd actually have 200,000-ish servers that it could go and then use that exploit against. It allows us to do interesting researching tools, but it also allows me to try and identify your networks in certain ways. So say you all have this one port open and it's all using a specific type of traffic. I can use Shodan here to search and find all of those devices. Shodan is just a scanner out on the internet. It just goes and indexes the whole internet over and over again, finding what is out there and what is allowed and what we can actually touch and use. The Harvester. This is a fun tool that allows me to search Google, Bing, any of the major search engines out there, and pull down emails. These emails allow me to start building a list of people that I'm going to try and fish later. I'm going to either target them specifically with whaling or spear phishing attacks, or I'm going to just blanket the entire network with all the emails or just something I'm hoping that you're going to click on and give me creds or some type of information about them. If you look at the top screenshot there, you'll see that I identified 2 live hosts out on the internet. One is VantagePoint, our actual website, and one is actually our timesheet out there as well. On the far right side, you can actually see our email addresses. These email addresses are all known to us. You may interact with some of them, you may not, and some of them are just random ones out there that were also found in this search. So in this search, I queried the first 500 issues of Google, and my engine came back with all of this. This is now my list. I can export it into a text document. In that text document, I will then use it for targeting all of those VantagePoint email addresses. And then Google hacking. Google hacking is a loose term, but it is a way of exploiting different information or finding it in specific queries out on the internet. So if you look down by the dates that were actually searched, these are different queries that come up with quick search of passwords. These allow me to go out, find information about passwords, and try and target people more specifically with that. So if I take this admin password one, for example, and I throw an IP along with it, Google will then come back with any information about that IP and any of the .text, .logs, .config files that have the word password in them. It allows me to get very specific with what's been indexed by Google. And if you don't know, Google goes about searching your websites through a robots.txt file. And if you edit that in creative ways, you can get Google to not index these types of files. But most people don't know about that. So I'm able to go out and find good information about possible good creds that are out on the internet. Once I've gone through passive reconnaissance, gathering the information about the network without having to interact with them, I'm going to start going about the physical interaction of identifying a network. So looking at the front doors, the side doors, anything from Google Maps view, you can zoom in, you can look at logs or look at the locks on the doors, you can look at the readers on the walls, or just try and identify different ways in. Maybe there's a window open at a given building or anything like that. With those, I will start trying to find social media presence as well. If you have a Facebook page, a Twitter page, I'm going to start looking for the general dress code that is shown in all of these different photos. And specifically, I'm looking for ID badges that you may have out there. If I find an ID badge, I'm actually going to go about creating it my own. I have a printer that's sitting right behind me that I can actually print these IDs with, and they actually come out very convincingly. This is one I used in the past where I was a Cummins employee and I was coming in to do some maintenance. And I can go about making these based off of photos I find out on the internet. So please make sure your employees are not having those out on the internet. And then all this information I'm going to use to build my on-site impersonations or vision calls or phishing emails that I'm going to use against you guys. All right, and then finally, the impersonation tools that I'm going to use. So on the top right there is actually what's called a USB rubber ducky. This rubber ducky allows me to run a script through an unlocked computer and gain information. So what that usually does is these are devices I'm going to leave around the network, and once plugged in, it's going to run, grab some passwords, and email them to me. It's a very nice tool because once I get physical access, I can leave these wherever I think somebody might plug them in. One thing you should do, you should never allow USB devices, but if you do, these are a very effective tool against you. The other one I'm going to keep on me is the Bash Bunny down there. This allows me to have 2 different switches where I'm able to run different scripts during that point. What these scripts do varies upon what I'm trying to achieve in the assessment, but they allow me access into the computer. They attempt to try and unlock the computer in some fashion or do other malicious things. And then if we go over to the packet squirrel, this is a device I actually leave in a network. If I'm physically able to gain access to the building and I'm able to gain access to a computer, I'm going to unplug that computer from the wall and plug this device in its place. The computer won't notice anything going on, and it'll allow the traffic to flow freely and allow that device to access the network. But it now gives me a spot into the network where I can log in and I can try and get further into that network. And finally, lockpicks. This is the absolute last resort. People always say that this is the first thing that they go to, but this is never a reliable way of getting into a building. If the opportunity is given to me and I have nothing else to use on it, I will try and lockpick my way in, but it is the absolute last resort. And as far as those USB devices, you can get creative in where you drop them. I may not even have to get into the building. I may just leave them in your parking lot right outside a door I know employees go in the morning. Or if I do get in, conference rooms, hallways are very good places. You can see the different numbers that we've tracked over the years of where we put these devices and where they've been plugged in as well. And the final plan. So we have done all of our research, we've done everything, and it's the day of the attack. I'm going to physically go on site and I'm going to try and get into the building. Well, first, for me, I always get caffeine. I like to have something in my hand where I can take a sip of it, and hopefully somebody will not ask me a question if I'm sipping on something as I walk by. When I first get there, I'm going to also check the wireless. You can see on the far right there, I'm looking at the wireless signal, seeing what strength it's got, and seeing how many devices are out there and what it's connected to. Why I do this is if I'm able to access your wireless and I'm able to brute force that password, if you're using the most up-to-date encryption, there's still known issues with it, I'll eventually get that password and be able to log in. And then I'll look around, see what I can find, and I'm hoping to find an IP camera. Why do I want these cameras? So I can see where people are at in the building, what people are dressed like, make sure that I am the way I should be. And also, I want to start planting a seed. If I start making your wireless network go down and I show up as an ISP tech, I may be able to get in through the front door and in further. Or I'm going to call ahead, I'm going to leave my story in whatever fashion that might be and try and get in that way. And finally, I'm going to walk up to the building. Front desk people are always the most common ones to stop me and start questioning me. But my first goal is to just walk past them, not talk to them in any way, shape, or form, and just get further into the building. If I do get stopped, I'm going to have a story for why I'm there. Whether it's I'm a generator repair person, I'm here to repair the AC, or I'm an ISP coming to check on the internet issues that you guys are having. I'm going to have a story, a fairly convincing story, and I'm going to try and use that to get past you and get further into that building. And it's the goal of those front desk people to understand who is actually a legitimate third party coming into the building and who should be stopped on their way in. If I'm able to get into the building, the first thing I want to do is try and find a place to lay low, get a lay of the land, and see what's going on. That can be anything from a bathroom to a supply closet to a cleaning closet. I'm going to just try and hang out in one of those, see what's going on, see if anyone comes and checks on me. And if not, I may wait until after hours and come leave after that point. The other thing I'm looking for is internet access. If there are wall jacks out there, to see if I'm able to plug in, get access right away, get into the network, and then I'm going to start trying to leave devices behind. If I'm granted access or I find keys or any of those different things, I'm going to use it to the fullest extent and try and go from just an average user all the way up to a domain admin as fast as possible. And a few of the times I've been successful. In the bottom right there, you can actually see an ISP where I was able to just walk in the back doors. I hung out in a supply closet for 3 hours, granted, and then I was granted full access to the server room. I was in there with my team for about 3 hours, where we had full reign of the building. We got access to all the rooms except for one, and we were able to get onto the network and get the information that we were after in the assessment. In the top photo there, you can actually see one of my packet squirrels plugged in, and that's between a PC and the wall jack, and that's a way where I'm able to, after I leave, get back into the network and have a way to start moving further into that network as well. And the picture behind all of this, you can actually see one of the times we were able to get into one of the IP cameras, and I'm able to track where employees are, see what the building looks like, and get a general lay of the land going on. And of course, there are times where I'm going to fail. If I do end up failing and somebody is coming across and attacking or coming and identifying me, seeing that I'm not legitimate and calling the cops or anything, I'm going to present what is a get out of jail free card or the contract between my company and the other company. If somebody goes about doing this when they don't have that, you will go to jail and you will be charged for any of these things. So please know, if you're doing any of this type of information or these types of testing, you need to have signed contracts or you need to have permission from the company as you go about doing those testings. The other thing, if I do fail and somebody identifies me, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get away. I'm going to say, hey, I have information in my car that I need to go get, and I will come back and show it to you. If they allow me to leave the building, I'm going to get in my car, I'm going to drive away and go back to my hotel or wherever my base of operations was. The reason for this is interacting with the police is risky, especially in my line of work. Sorry about that. And the different topics I've talked about for social engineering are phishing, vision, and on-site impersonations. What these allow me to do are target different people in different ways. The phishing one is the emails. You've all seen the different scam emails sent to you in different fashions, but it's very interesting how many people actually go about clicking those links, following any of the information I send you, and actually providing me actual credentials for me to get into the network. And there's also phone phishing. This is where I'm calling you with a story and trying to get you to either start a remote session with me, give me information in some fashion, or I'm just seeing what questions you're going to ask me so my next call is successful. And then finally, the on-site impersonations, which I've been talking about a fair bit. So what does a phishing email look like? I'm hoping you've all seen them before, but if you look on the far right there, this is actually one of them I've used in the past. I'm just saying, hey, there's a new terms and services out there. Please click and follow my link, sign in and approve that you have followed those terms of services, or you're going to be changed in some fashion. So the very first thing you should do is identify, hey, that's coming from a wrong email address. That's not coming from a fiserv.com, fiserv.net, .org, whatever it might be. The other thing you should see is if you hover that link, it's also taking you to a very interesting place that you don't think that that traffic should be going. And from these, you should realize that this is spam email. You should report it to IT. You should have a filtering system in some fashion of reporting this as well. On the far right, or far left, sorry, you can see the username and password of somebody going in, following that link, and actually going about entering that information. And on the bottom, you can see the information that I'm provided on the back end. Obviously, I see the username and password as well, but I'm not going to show this in this case. You can see that we sent out 323 emails. 256 people actually looked at that email. 44 people actually failed for it, and one person entered good, valid credentials into the system. And the very last one is 44 people received the training of following the link or any of the information about this test. Another fun story I have for you is we were hired once to actually go steal cars. A telco out there was afraid that its technicians were leaving the keys in its vehicles, and they didn't have a way of tracking if the person just got in, turned on the vehicle, and drove away. So what our technician did is he went out into the field, he found some of these vehicles, used the keys that were in the ignition, drove it around the block and left it there, and called the client telling them that they had moved a specific vehicle to a specific spot. Once people had started getting wind of this, and we had done it 4 or 5 times, one guy actually went out, took his keys out, put his van keys in its place. So when our technician got in and actually tried to turn on that vehicle, he was unable to do so and was actually stopped at that point. And the guy had a good laugh about it because our technician looked kind of dumb not being able to start a vehicle. So by this point, a lot of people are saying, why is it so easy for hackers or us trying to get into a network? Well, A, we have the time to do it. I have the time to do the research, the background research, understand the network, and have a motivation of why I'm going to go do this. If there's no motivation, the person's going to just go do something else. But if they have the motivation, they may sit there for months, weeks, even years sometimes, trying to find information, trying to get people to click on links or do any of those other things. And they only need to succeed once. If you make them fail 400 times, but they succeed once, they're into the network and they have a foothold. And from there, they can move forward. Another question I get a lot is, so what now? So there are some very specific things you need to do to help defend yourself. First off, please stop using sticky notes for any of your username and passwords. It's crazy how many times I've come across these while I was going on site and doing any of these things. And I was able to get into different devices with username and passwords that were right next to me or underneath the keyboard, in a drawer, in a folder, anything like that. I was able to get access to that device and then move about the network from there. So please have a policy in place to keep your desk clean of any username, passwords, client information, anything just sitting on the side about financials or any of those things. None of that should be left out at night. Those should be in locked drawers at the very least, somewhere where they are secure. The other thing is, stop using passwords. What I mean by a password is a short word where you're changing O's to zeros and all sorts of other things where you think, hey, this follows along with the rules, but it's actually pretty easy for me to take, brute force, and break eventually. With this case, what we recommend is a passphrase. This is a phrase of 3 to 4 words where the entropy or how long it takes me to brute force it is longer. Obviously, you're still going to need a capital letter and a number somewhere in there, but please don't have the first letter of the word capitalized and a number at the end. It's very predictable, and I'm very good at actually going about and brute forcing these things in creative ways. Also, you can use two-factor authentication. Authenticators like Google, LastPass, Microsoft, they all have ways of sending you codes at the time of when you log in. So you go through your login page, username, password, and then ask for a code. If the person doesn't have the cell phone or the computer that has that authenticator on it, they will not be able to get in at that time. And it's a very strong way of stopping people from getting into your email or other means of getting into your network as well. There are also things like disabling unnecessary features on devices in general. So on your phones, there are lots of times where it's tracking you for GPS reasons, or your friends know on Facebook you can see person's friends, and then that allows you to go view their page that was previously hidden and able to go further down into it and eventually find the information I was talking about at the start of the presentation. Also, just limit the amount of use of what applications you use that track you. It's kind of crazy how much Google tracks people with their phones or any other Apple, Microsoft, any of those companies out there as well. The other thing you should always look out for is a site with non-signed certificates. So the very first image on the top there is where somebody doesn't have a signed trusted certificate. This is where they're using HTTPS, but they don't have a certificate signed by GoDaddy or any of the other trusted sources out there. Where you're looking for is that lock symbol with HTTPS next to it. That means there's an encrypted session between you and that website, and it's going to be hard for somebody to actually get in place there and actually break that communication string to actually see what's going on. Don't share your personal devices, information, or anything with other people. For example, don't hand somebody your cell phone that has your saved password on it, because then they can go about opening that up and actually looking at what your password is and saving it for their use later on. And obviously, always be wary of any links provided in an email. I highly recommend not following the link in the email, but typing it out yourself into Google browser or something and visiting just the website, not following the link fully itself, so that you know it's coming from a trusted location and you know it's a good, secure website as well. What else can you do? So many people say invest in cybersecurity, and what does that actually mean? That means get a third-party assessment and also do training, at least annual training for all users or when they come on board. Every user should understand that, hey, we're going to run phishing tests against you, and we're going to try and get you to click on those links. And if you're able to pass our tests, then you're going to be able to pass a hacker's or somebody malicious trying to target you. There are also topics like phone vision and other ones that should be covered. The proper way to come in the building in the morning, not to let somebody tailgate you, other training topics just like that. We need to have a better awareness in the industry of what needs to be done to allow somebody into the building, into the server room, and all of that fun stuff. I'd like to thank everyone for joining me today, and if you want to, you can submit questions into the chat box and I will get to them as soon as I can.